Hello, my name is Mrs. Tufton and I teach psychology at St. Bede's. So I'm going to run through a little bit about the GCSE psychology for you. I absolutely hate doing these videos, so I feel very self-conscious. So hopefully I'll get all the information across to you. If there is anything that you want to ask afterwards, then I will give you my email details at the end of the presentation and you'll be able to contact me for any further questions. Okay, so first things first, these are some of the preconceptions and conceptions that people tend to have about psychology. So psychologists are not all the same. We don't always analyze people. You won't be able to tell what people are thinking once you've done psychology. We're not always talking about feelings, and we are not only interested in abnormal psychology or abnormal behavior. So these are some of the common misconceptions about psychology. What psychology is a scientific study of human behavior and the mind and how the mind works. It's scientific and rigorous. So this is something I'll come back to again. It's really important if you are thinking about doing psychology that you have to be aware that this is a science, and therefore we will be looking at behavior in a scientific way. So you do need to make sure that you're comfortable and you enjoy science. It's a subject that tests theories and gathers evidence and develops laws about behaviour and about human beings. It's a broad subject. There's many areas that we cover, and I'll talk you through those as we go through the PowerPoint. And psychology is always changing. So as research evolves, our theories on why humans do certain things changes. And finally, and obviously I'd probably say this because I'm a little bit biased, I think it's really interesting and it's really worthwhile. It can lead on to several things. Again, I'll touch on some of these as we go through. So what will you study? These are the different topics you study at GCSE. So the first one is development, and by this we're talking about child development. So we look at the stages that children go through in their development. We kind of explore whether or not that's something that children would go through naturally, or is it that actually the nurturing environment that they're in, is that what creates their kind of development, aids their development. So we look at development. That's one area that we'd look at. We also study memory. So we think of, we look at the analogy of our memories being a little bit like a computer and how that works. We look at things like if you walk into a room and you walk in and you think, I've come in here for something, I don't know what it is I've come in here for. What's going on with that? Why have you forgotten that bit of information? We also look at some case studies like the one pictured here. So this gentleman in the picture here basically suffered from a really bad virus which attacked part of his brain, and as a result he only has like a 7-second memory, so can't create any kind of new memories and can't access his long-term memories. So we'd look at like what's going on there, what does that tell us about our own memories. We also look at social influence. So this is why the people around us or the situations we're in or even factors within us might make us act in certain ways. So in this picture here, what you've got going on is it's quite a funny video. When we study social influence, you would get to see this. This gentleman here is dressed up as a policeman, and by merely dressing up as a policeman or as a security guard, he asks the people in the video to do very bizarre things like only step on every other stepping stone. And it's that idea of, okay, well, why do people tend to follow those orders when it's somebody dressed in a uniform? Whereas if your best friend asked you to do that, you probably would look at them and think, well, no, actually, I'm not going to do that. Also looks at things like why, if you've ever had that situation where you were sat in, and I'm using a really basic analogy, if you were sat in a class and the teacher asked, maths class say, and the teacher asked what 2 plus 2 is, and she asked, is it 4 or is it 5? If the whole class put their hand up and said it was 5, how you might then be tempted, even though you know that 2 plus 2 is 4, how you might be tempted to put your hand up and join the rest of the class. Why do we do that as humans? So it asks those questions. We also study psychological problems, and in this we look at mental health. So there's lots of topics that we do cover here. One of the things, and again I will touch on this a little bit later, is I would stress here that obviously sometimes we're touching on really sensitive issues. So it's something that you must really be aware of if this is a subject for you. Obviously, if you do want to study it and there is some areas that you feel might be a little bit I don't know, sensitive for you, then do let us know. But certainly it's a good to be aware before you study psychology that these things might come up. Sometimes they do prove a little bit problematic for students, so that's just a little bit of a warning. One of the things we look at in this unit is we look at depression, we look at schizophrenia, so how why might people become schizophrenic, how do we treat that, what are the symptoms like, all of those kind of things. Sleep and dreaming is another one of our topics. So this looks at why we sleep, why we dream, what are the purpose of our dreams, and there are lots of different theories from psychologists on this. What's the purpose of that dreaming? And another topic we look at is criminal psychology, and the picture shown here explores basically lots of criminal psychologists exploring whether or not criminals are born or a result of their environment. And the picture here looks, one of the topics that we study is whether or not violent video games has an impact on criminal behaviour. So those are the topics that you study, and roughly we do them Unit 1 in the first year, and we go on to Unit 2 in the second year, although sometimes we will do perhaps Unit 2 topics in the first year and vice versa, just to really, depending on how we feel is the best way to kind of scaffold your learning. There will be mocks in Year 10, and in Year 11, obviously you would have your mocks as well, and the external exams that we have in Year 11. So there are 2 exams for psychology. It's all 100% exam, and each of the exams you sit is worth 50% of your mark. Now, the other thing I haven't touched on yet, but you might have noticed on here, most of the topics I talked through, the one I didn't talk about was research methods, and I touched on this at the beginning of this talk. Research methods is really important to psychology, and what research methods is basically making psychology scientific, so making sure that you understand how to study behaviour scientifically, and that's a really key part. But what you can't see on this slide is that actually research. Oh yes, you can. Sorry, you can see that research methods is assessed in both exams. So it's something that we really grasp and make sure that is embedded in our students. So again, if science isn't your thing, then I would suggest having a little bit of a rethink about psychology, because it is very scientific in nature, and research methods does make up a big proportion of your overall mark. So it's something that we will come back to time and time again, looking at how to make our studies scientific and also how we can conduct research ourselves as well. So we will do some experiments where you will actually design an experiment, and providing on how ethical they are, whether or not we can actually run those experiments. So some of the personal qualities, I'll just move this here from the bottom, that I think you need to know about psychology and what would make you understand whether psychology is a subject for you. I think a real sort of thirst and interest for finding out about human behaviour and what makes us human. I've come back to it again, make sure you do enjoy science and you enjoy that scientific application. I've touched on again the sensitive nature of some of the subjects that we follow. Obviously, it makes lots of subjects very, very interesting, but some things can be a little bit sensitive, so do be aware of that. We do expect students to be very mature. We touch on lots of things. So a very open yet critical mind is vital for psychology. We do lots of in-class discussions as well, so it's really important for you to be able to express yourself verbally in class as well as in written form. And at the bottom I say hard-working and good attitude. I would say one of the things that lots of psychology students do know is there is lots of research that you do have to know. So there's lots of note-taking, and you will be expected to go away and read around the subject. So it does require a real critical kind of mind and somebody who's quite mature and has that thirst for finding out about what makes us human. Okay. So careers in psychology, my degree was in psychology, so obviously I've gone into teaching. I know people that went into market research, people who went into clinical psychology, other people that went into educational psychology, friends that went into nursing, some friends that went into like special education, counselling. I've got one friend who's a sports psychologist. So there are lots of different things that you can do with psychology related jobs related to psychology, it does open a lot of avenues to you. And I would say there's lots of transferable skills as well. Obviously, thinking about it at degree level is a long way off, but this would be a nice springboard into deciding whether or not this might be something that you would wish to consider at A level and maybe on to degree level. Sorry, I've gone on one too many. So psychology skills you need, and I've touched on these again, good communication skills. So I will expect you to take part in those lessons and make sure you're debating and talking about ideas. Some of my best classes are the ones where students are really willing to share and kind of offer opinions and talk through things. Obviously, to be aware that there is a lot of writing in psychology. You will, I would also expect a student who is considering psychology to be quite strong in their English as well as their maths and science, because a big component of the exam is these 13-mark questions that we get, which almost requires a candidate to write a mini kind of essay. So you do need to have English as something that you're very good at. The maths component I've touched on here, so maths calculations we do ask you to do. They aren't by all means too taxing, but there is that element of them there so that you do know that. We do say, and if you look at the bottom of the slide here, that we would like pupils who are eligible for studying triple science alongside psychology, as the standard of work is quite similar. And we do also ask, just really in order to make sure that you guys can get the best success out of psychology, we do ask for students that have a target of a 6 in their triple sciences. This is a psychology book that we use as we go through the course, and this will basically guide you through it. This is something that if you really do think that psychology might be for you, might be something you want to invest in beforehand, just have a look through and see what you think of the subject. I'm going to stop there and leave you there. My email address, if you want to email me with any questions, is a.tufton@stbcc.org. By all means, get in contact and drop me an email and ask me if you think it might be relevant for you, or if there's anything that I haven't covered that you want to know about, etc., etc. And hope to see you soon. Thank you.